Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started. Welcome to the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. We've got a quorum of members present, so we'll get started with our agenda today. We've got a presentation this morning, then we'll move on to discussing and voting on the committee rules, and then we'll have an agency briefing today from the Department of Defense Veterans and Emergency Management. So before we get started with the presentation, let's start with committee introductions, and we can start with the House Chairman Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Chiazzo, House District 28, West Scarborough.
Great. Senator Farron.
Yeah, hi, I'm Senator Brad Farron, representing District 3, which is the majority of Somerset County.
Great. Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Marianne Kinney. I'm representative for House District 99, which includes the towns of Brooks, Burnham, Freedom, Jackson, Knox, Monroe, Thorndike, Troy, and Unity in Waldo County.
Great. Representative McCrate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and Northeast Brunswick in the House. And sorry, I don't have as many towns to list, Representative Kinney.
It's easier to remember that way. Representative Supika.
Thank you. My name is Laura Supika, and I represent District 126, a portion of Bangor.
Great. And Representative Riley.
Hi, I'm Representative Morgan Riley. I represent half of Westbrook, District 34.
Great. And my name's Louis Lucchini. I represent most of Hancock County in the state Senate. With us today are our staff for the committee. We have Karen Montel, who's our committee clerk, and Janet Stocco, who's our committee analyst. So we wanted to kick off today with a presentation from our analyst. Janet's going to present a little bit of oversight on major substantive rules. Next week, we're going to have some rules before us, so it's always helpful for first time or dealing with rules to have a review over how the entire process works before we hit it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Janet. So Janet, you're on mute, but we can see your screen.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
I did want to share my screen again, just because that's the thing I do, I guess. So this should look familiar to you. It's the VLA committee page. If I've lost you before on how you get here, or if you've been unable to attend the other sessions, because I know many legislators are on multiple committees, just contact me after the meeting and I can give you a private tour of the legislature's website and let you know where everything is. But the reason I went here is because the handout for today is on the orientation materials page. And if I click on it, I should hopefully be able to share it right from this page and I'll have to find it in the files on my desktop. So cross your fingers. Oh, worked so far. So this, sorry, I wanted to blow it up. Okay, this handout gives you an overview of your responsibility in overseeing and reviewing major substantive rules that are adopted by departments. So it's important to know, I'm not going to read every word on this page, but just so you know where we are, I'm starting at the top. It's important to know that agencies and departments are not allowed to adopt any rules unless the legislature has granted the agency the authority to make that rule. And the rules must be consistent with the law under which they are adopted. So if you have not enacted a statute that tells an agency that it can or must make a rule, they can't just willy-nilly decide to do so. And if they do adopt a rule that is inconsistent with statute or unallocated law in a bill that's been passed, then the law that you passed supersedes the rule. So this is why, if you remember during the Office of Marijuana Policy's presentation the other day, they mentioned part of the reasons they need to change some of their rules are because laws have been adopted that are inconsistent with the rules they currently have. So any rule that they have right now in place that is inconsistent with the law doesn't really have any legal force. It's the statute that wins the battle between an inconsistent rule and an inconsistent statute. After 1996, the legislature passed a provision of the Administrative Procedures Act, which tells the legislature that every time it delegates rulemaking authority to an agency, it should categorize rules as routine, technical, or major substantive. The bullet points here on this handout give you information from the Administrative Procedures Act that tells you the different types of things that that statute suggests should be a routine technical rule or should be a major substantive rule. But the real important part is this paragraph down here. The major consideration when you enact a law that tells an agency or a department to adopt rules, and when you have to decide whether you want those rules to be major substantive or routine technical, your key consideration is going to be whether you as a legislature wish to review the rule before it's finally adopted. If you do wish to review the rule before it's finally adopted, you'll want to tell them to make a major substantive rule. If you think that it's the kind of rule where it's pretty straightforward and okay, and you don't mind if they go into effect before the legislature reviews it, then you would make that a routine technical rule. And that decision is made at the time that the statute is passed that requires the rulemaking or that allows for the rulemaking. If you're interested in how or the process by which the agency develops the rules, Director Gunderson did discuss this a little bit in his presentation, and we have some information here in this part of the handout, which is posted on the committee's webpage. But the important things to know are there has to be notice to the public from the agency that it's considering adopting a rule, and that notice is also sent to the legislature, and through the executive director's office, that notice will make its way to your email inbox if it's an agency that's under the jurisdiction of this committee. The notice is helpful because it allows people to know when there will be a public hearing on the rule, and the public hearing is required every time an agency or department is going to adopt a major substantive rule. Often, an agency will also have a public hearing if they're going to adopt a routine technical rule. They're not required to, but they often do. And they actually will be required to if at least 5 people request that they do. So I think it's general practice. They usually just hold a public hearing unless it's something really minor. The notice in the public hearing, they then allow people to provide comments on the rule, and the agency will have to respond to all those comments and look through all of those comments. They don't just receive them and then throw them in the trash. The statute requires them to actually look through and respond to them. So that's an important protection. And then they will finalize what are their proposed rules, and those will be reviewed for legality by the Office of the Attorney General. At that point, if it's a routine technical rule, then it can be finally adopted by the agency, and that will in fact have the force of law as a rule, and everyone has to start following the rules. If it's a major substantive rule, however, that means that the legislature decided that it wanted a chance to review the rule before that rule could be finally adopted. And that's when you come into play, and that's what's going to be happening next week when you hear LD 139, which is about the final adoption of some rules that have been provisionally adopted by the Gambling Control Unit regarding fantasy gaming. So at this point, remember, they've gone through all their notice, their public hearing, responding to comments, reviewing by the Office of the Attorney General. If it's a major substantive rule, which is what you're going to review next week, it's only provisionally adopted. At that point, it's sent to the legislature, and the legislature prints a resolve. And that's what you'll see in LD 139. If you look at the text, it's a resolve, and it's printed in a way that tells the agency, yes, you can adopt it. But you just consider that like you would any other bill. You decide, do we want to allow them to adopt it or do we not? When you make that decision, there is a statute here, which we've hyperlinked so that you can find it quickly. And I'll just show you really quickly. And this statute, as part of the Administrative Procedures Act, tells you the criteria or suggests criteria for you to consider when you decide whether it should be finally adopted. And so down here in subsection 4 of this statute, I think maybe I should zoom in a little bit. It'll give you some criteria, like have they exceeded the scope of their authority? Have they conformed to the intent of the statute that the rule is supposed to implement? So those are the types of things that the law directs you to consider when you decide whether you want to vote for or against the final adoption of the major substantive rule that comes before you. So what are your options when you vote? You can decide to allow the agency to adopt the rule as it is drafted currently, or only part of the rule. Maybe you agree with A, B, and C, but D, E, and F just don't seem advisable to you. So you might say, I want to vote for A, B, and C, but I would really like to tell them to work on the other parts later or change them in a certain way. Or you can say, contingent upon the agency making changes. These number 2 and 3 are basically the same option. Or you could say, nope, I think they need to go back to the drawing board and start over. So I'm going to vote to tell them that they're not authorized to finally adopt the rule. So there is one sort of a tricky thing, and this is the trickiest thing that trips people up. And if you remember nothing else from what I say today, it is don't worry. When we get to a work session, I will tell you what voting ought to pass, what voting ought not to pass, what voting ought to pass amended will do. So you do not need to memorize this, but just for purposes of the overview, it's important for you to know that the statute sets in place a deadline for when agencies are supposed to submit their provisionally adopted major substantive rules to the legislature for review. I am guessing here, but I think the desire is to give the legislature enough time to work the resolve and to decide what it wants to do. So it's an encouragement to agencies to submit their proposed rules within an early enough time. And that time is 5 p.m. on the second Friday in January after the convening of the regular session. The rules that you are going to review at the public hearing next week were submitted on time. So these rules were filed within the rule acceptance period. That's the official term under the statute. They were submitted in time. So what does that mean? Well, this is a major substantive rule. The legislature has the authority to review it. And the way that the Administrative Procedures Act is, it says, okay, the legislature wants to review it. That's why they made it major substantive. But the agency submitted it early on in the legislative session. So the default rule will be, if the legislature does nothing, if they fail to act, then the rule can go ahead and be adopted as it was drafted by the agency. So that's sort of the understanding. We trust the agency as a general rule. They allowed us to review it. If we do nothing, then they can go ahead and finally adopt it. But that's only if they submit it on time. And the Department of Public Safety did submit this on time. It's important to know that what does it mean for you to fail to act? If you get this resolve and you look at it, and as a committee, you either forget to vote on it or you strategically decide not to vote on it and you never do anything with it, you are not preventing the Gambling Control Board from adopting these rules. They submitted them in time. The only way you can stop them from adopting the rules as written is to do something. So you might vote, ought to pass as amended. I would like to have them adopt all the rules, but change 1, 2, or 3. Or you might ought to pass as amended. I want to amend the resolve to say, please do not adopt these rules. I disagree with them wholeheartedly. I wouldn't write all of that in the amendment, but that would be the effect. So if you want them to be able to enact the rules, you could do nothing, but most of the time it makes a lot of sense to just say ought to pass the resolve. It shows the committee's approving of the rules and it'll go forward. But what happens if you really, really don't want them to go forward? It's important to remember if there's a split committee vote and it goes to the chambers and there's a split vote between the chambers and the vote on the resolve ends up dying in non-concurrence, the legislature has failed to act. It has not passed anything. The rules can go ahead and be adopted as written. If there's a majority of both chambers that votes in favor of a resolve saying, no, please don't adopt these rules, and the governor vetoes it and you can't override the veto, you failed to act, the rules can be adopted. So that's the way that the rule review process works. It is very tricky and I'm not expecting you to remember it. I think the most important thing to remember is they propose rules, they're major substantive rules, they'll come to you and you can pay attention during the work session. I'll tell you which way to vote, but if they've submitted them in time, which the Department of Public Safety has, then they're going to be able to adopt them unless you stop them from doing so. If the rules are submitted late, it's sort of a flip reverse where the rules were submitted late. So the default is unless the legislature does something, the rules can't go forward because they didn't make the deadline. We won't talk about this unless it happens, but it is possible. The deadline's now passed. It is possible some major substantive rules will be submitted for your review later in the session. If that happens, we'll go over what the votes are and what happens if you vote different ways. So just to give you a preview from what happens on Monday, we are getting rules from the Department of Public Safety. When the statute was created, remember I tell you the statute which they're adopting the rules under has to tell them whether it's major substantive or not. So this statute says when you make rules about fantasy gaming, they are going to be major substantive rules. That's why you're getting them to review. Interestingly enough, this statute has a little twist. After this initial adoption, any changes they make will be routine technical. So this is sort of the one time the committee will see them. And the statute told the department what rules they were required to adopt. So it says you need to address all of these different subjects. And we'll talk about it after the hearing, what you think about how they address those subjects and what you agree with or disagree. And after everything's all wrapped up, after this session is over, the agency must finally adopt the rule with any amendments you've directed them to change within 60 days of the effective date of the legislation. The one before you has an emergency preamble, which means as soon as the chambers have voted on it and the governor signed it, or you've overridden any veto, they'll have 60 days from that date to make any of the changes you direct them to, and then we will have final fantasy gaming rules. If the emergency preamble were to be taken off of that, which is something you have the option to do, then they would have 60 days after the 90 days after adjournment. So it just depends on whether you want them to happen quickly or not. One thing you might be saying and asking yourself is, well, Janet, I peeked at the resolve. All the resolve says is, agency, you may adopt this rule. So how do I know what the rule says? And this Friday, most likely, maybe Thursday, it depends on how this timing goes. I have scanned a copy of all of what the rule says, and it'll be sent to you so you can review it over the weekend and see it before the hearing, or maybe you just want to listen to the hearing and then you want to read the text of the rule after. It doesn't matter what order it is, but you will have a copy of the text. What happens is the statute requires the agency to send 20 copies of it. So I have a box with 20 hard copies in my office, but we're not in a paper world. So we're going to scan it, upload it on the website, and email it to you. So you will have a chance to see it and see exactly what it is you're voting on. So don't feel bad asking, because I would want to see what I was voting on too. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know I went over it quickly, but I just wanted to give you a preview, and then we'll really get into the nitty-gritty when we get to the work session on those rules, and you'll know exactly which way to vote if you want to do certain things. I'll make sure that that's clear at that time.
Great, thank you, Janet. Does anybody have any questions for Janet? It's always kind of a confusing, especially the first time coming around when if you try to kill a rule and it actually goes into effect if it's filed on time and the inverse. So
yeah, so I'll warn you if that's a possibility. I'll tell you, you need to act on this or you don't. Well, I'll make sure it's clear.
Great. Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I think it's always helpful to have that refresher before we get into rules. And as Janet said, Monday we'll hear our first rule from the Gambling Control Unit. So
LD 139 if you want a preview of it.
that's right. And that one is a department one, though. It's will be introduced by the House Chair. So, okay, seeing no questions on that, I think we will move to the next item on our agenda. We had a committee discussion of and vote on the model committee rules. I know Janet kind of took us line by line through the rules last week, and so hopefully people have had a chance to to look through them. They're, it's generally the standard rules plus the new addendum that committees are adding on, given the virtual nature of our work. So.
Did you want me to share them, or do you all just want to discuss them?
Sure, if you'd like, you can share, and if there's any discussion, we can. If anybody has any questions or issues with the rules, we can take it. Otherwise, we can take a motion if people are good with it.
So I'm going to make this bigger, sorry.
Great, thanks. And the highlighted sections that Janet had were the changes that were made through the addendum, which we also have.
I can scroll to any section you want to discuss, or just let me know.
I don't know. I think if people don't have questions, I think we can move ahead to a vote. I know we kind of went through these line by line last week, but if anybody has questions, we can take them. Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one concern, and I think we've mostly addressed it, and it's regarding using the chat feature during our meetings to have, because it is possible, and I'll admit I used it earlier today just to let Karen know that Representative Corey was in appropriations, just to let her know that that's where he was, because she had just started the live stream. Once we're on live stream, the public is not able to see that. They can't see us necessarily picking up our phones and texting one another or passing a note to one another. And that's been something in the past that's always been public that people could see. And so they could tell we were talking to each other, but the chat function is very hidden. And we have concerns that could get used instead of having a caucus, breaking for a caucus or doing something. And I just wanted to know if it's possible to turn off the chat function. There's so many different things we can do within the Zoom platform. I didn't know if that was a possibility, just to remove that temptation.
Right. It's a great point, because we don't want any substantive being done privately. The reason why we've kept the chat on is just for technical issues, because we regularly kind of run into tech issues. And for instance, just this morning, trying to figure out who people may be or not, it's helpful to have that functionality. But I think if something were written that was substantive, then it would have to be saved for FOA purposes. But we certainly discourage anybody from doing it. But I think keeping it just for the IT stuff is kind of important, at least at the beginning. But we certainly don't want anybody to do the business of the committee that way. I don't know if that answers. And I don't know if we had a rule. Did we have a rule in the proposal about the chat feature, Janet, or was that in kind of the memo? I can't recall.
So the chat feature, what I noticed in the addendum about it, sorry to scroll, I know that's hard to watch, is during the public hearings, it says that all questions have to be addressed through the chair. And then in the addendum, it says they have to be asked orally, not via chat. This is my paraphrasing of the rule, the addendum. It doesn't say that word for word, but that's what they're getting at. So it's not clearly, and then it also says the same thing for work sessions, that questions have to be addressed through the chair and must be asked orally, which means not via the chat function. And it also says for work sessions, people who aren't committee members can't participate, including by using any of the Zoom functions, which would include chat or something else. They can't do that without leave of the chair. I didn't see anything in here that specifically bars the use of chat for substantive discussions, although I've told you that under FOA, and just as Senator Lucchini said, that's not advisable because of the public access issue. I don't think there's any problem with drafting a rule that you would propose to add that would say that. That's up to you, of course, as a committee. And if it turns out that the presiding officers believe that it's already included in their addendum, then they can just instruct you, we think this part of the addendum includes it. You don't need your own rule, but I don't think it's harmful if you so choose to add something to these rules.
Representative Kinney, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess my part of it, and I've used Zoom quite a bit over the summer and through all of this stuff. Is it is the chat function something that is saved somehow? That if there are chats that go on, is it followable because we would be able to get hold of that information, or is it gone once we're out of the Zoom? That might be a question for IT rather than for this group, but
right. Yeah, I don't have the answer to if they save that stuff, or whoever technically the host is. But I think it would probably be incumbent on the legislator, if they wrote something substantive, to maybe screen share it, much like we're supposed to hold on to our texts and emails. But we can ask and inquire to see with IT if that happens. Representative Caiazzo, you may know the answer to that better than me.
I don't know in terms of what's saved and what's not saved, but perhaps to alleviate some of Representative Kenny's concerns, we can agree collectively that anything that goes in the chat is a group chat and not individual. For example, this morning that we do have two people on this meeting that are labeled Zoom and iPad, and I direct message them individually to ask them to identify themselves, but I didn't put that in the whole group. But if it makes you more comfortable, perhaps we could come up with an agreement and just add that anything that goes in the chat function needs to be seen by all, and in the group session, because I do think it has a lot of importance and a lot of value from a technical standpoint to be able to communicate with the clerk and the analysts necessarily without having to interrupt the meeting and process or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there may be times where people might want to direct. My only thought is they may want to directly send a message to Karen if there's some technical issue, but then not let everybody see it, type of thing. But if we wanted to clarify in the rule, and I'm open to whatever, but we could also clarify in the addendum that, and Janet, you would know better how to word this just looking at it, that the chat is not to be used for any substantive or committee related discussions, but just for technical support. Maybe just being a little more explicit about that. Is there, I don't know, Janet, if you think there's a way we can craft that in there?
I can absolutely try, no problem.
Okay. And then
Figure
if
out where to put it.
don't like it, they can reject it.
Right.
Senator Farron.
Yeah, and the other thing, Louis, that I just probably throw out there, I think we all got to be aware of, is that there's probably going to be some challenges and changes as we're entering into this and learning experiences, that we got to recognize that and be willing to adapt a little bit as we evolve down this road that none of us have any experience with. Right.
And that's a important point. If we run into any issues with these rules, we can certainly revisit them at any time. And, we're happy to take a look at it and see if we need to tweak something to make it more doable. So any other discussion on the rules? If people are comfortable, we can take a motion and see if we can find a way to craft that the new addition to the addendum, just to make sure that everybody's clear that we're not supposed to be having discussions or caucuses or anything through the chat feature. And certainly if anybody on either side of the aisle needs to take a break for a caucus or anything, they can just let us know, and we try to accommodate everybody whenever you need time to digest something. So
May I ask clarifying? So it would say no substantive discussions, okay for technical support reasons, and request a caucus. Do you want me to put that down too? Because somebody might consider that substantive.
I think requesting caucus you can do verbally.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, yeah, that'd probably be better if people did that verbally. And then, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to confuse the two issues. Great. Any other questions, discussion on that? Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just this morning in a caucus, we were told that by next week or so, we'd have a system for the corner caucus idea. So I'm just double checking. I don't think it's available yet to do through Zoom, but just asking.
I think in terms of caucusing, I think people, I mean, what I think each side, the leads or the chairs, people can just, I mean, what my recommendation would be to leave this meeting and then do a totally separate Zoom meeting, because you can't have two simultaneously. And I think because we don't want nonpartisan staff involved with caucuses or anything like that, or setting up any partisan activities. So as long as we have, the way we have it set up is that Karen will be logged in all the time, so we can log off, have those discussions, and then log back in using the same link that you had used previously. And I think that's probably the easiest way. That way it's the parties are in charge of their caucuses rather than putting nonpartisan staff in a difficult situation. And I think there is like a breakout room feature, but I think it's probably better just to totally do it separately, just for all security and every other reason. Because I think if I were to set up breakout rooms, I think there is a way that I could see what's going on in every breakout room. And obviously we don't want to do stuff like that. So Representative Cazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to point out too that just because there's a Zoom setup, nobody's obligated to use the process. A caucus, you guys any side can control a caucus any way they want. There's nothing that's requiring them to use the separate Zoom. It's just, I think it's going to be a feature that nonpartisan staff is going to provide, that would be partisan staff, would provide so that to give us the venue if we so choose. But there's nothing preventing the caucuses from communicating any way they want, phone, text, anything like that. It's there how they want to set their caucus up. So it's just giving an option if they want to use it.
Great. Any other discussion? Representative Cazzo, are you ready to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am. I would move that we accept the committee rules along with the addendum as amended.
Okay. So the motion's to accept the committee rules with the addendum and the amendment to clarify the chat feature. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. So motion by Representative Cazzo, a second and a third by Senator Farron and Representative Kinney. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of, actually, let me just count. Yeah, we've got 7. Okay, all those in favor of ought to pass as amended, we'll just do a raise your physical hand in the box and just hold them up so we can see it. So all those in favor of ought to pass as amended, please signify. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's a unanimous ought to pass as amended, and that for people listening in, that's just going to go through the boxes. We have House Chairman Cazzo, Representative Kinney, Representative Riley, Representative McCray, Representative Supika, and Senator Farron, and Senator Lucchini supporting the motion.
Hey, that's like a milestone, right? We just had our first Zoom vote in VLA.
And it was unanimous.
There you go. We're off to a good start. Huh?
Batting 100% right now. Great. So so we won't start the next briefing till 11:30, and perhaps Karen we've got another device in the waiting room that doesn't identify itself. So hopefully perhaps Karen can send them a message. Just a quick note on the appropriations process. So Janet, that's tomorrow for us, right?
Yes, the supplemental budget joint hearing with AFA is tomorrow starting at 1. You should have in your email, it was sent last week, an email that was sent by AFA committee. That's who the from line should be, and that has the Zoom link for you. And that Zoom link is unique to you, so I cannot send it to you. Karen can't send it to you. It's unique to you from that committee. So hopefully if you search AFA, you should be able to find it. Originally, when we put together the weekly schedule, I was under the misunderstanding that the joint public hearings would occur just like they normally do for the budget. So for people who are new, normally what happens when you're in person is they'll have a block of time. Maybe that's for criminal justice, VLA, and judiciary, which is what's happening tomorrow afternoon. And criminal justice would go in, all of the testimony about that block of items in the supplemental budget would happen. It would all wrap up, then they'd all leave, and then you would all come in. And the next thing would happen for the VLA committee. But because of the way people sign up to testify, they cannot tell when people are signing up which block they're testifying about. So what they're doing is the Commissioner Figueroa, will discuss the criminal justice parts and ask for any questions from the Criminal Justice Committee or the AFA committee. Then she'll discuss the Veterans and Legal Affairs parts again with the questions, and then judiciary. And then it's my understanding what will happen after that, it'll be open up for public testimony, which could be on any of those items. So I've been told to recommend to you to all join the Zoom at 1. If you want to turn off your video during the criminal justice part, then you won't be broadcast on YouTube, which will help because then all the little squares won't be really, really tiny because there's so many people showing. You don't have to do that. That's just a suggestion. And then you'll be there and maybe waiting through, but you'll be there when the Veterans and Legal Affairs portion starts. There is another little hiccup involving testimony. So when people submit testimony online, they submit it by LD number. There's one LD number for the supplemental budget. All of that testimony is being sent to the inboxes of the committee clerk and the members of the AFA committee. What they're going to then do is somebody's responsible for reading all of that testimony and figuring out which things have to do with VLA. Those will either be emailed to Karen or myself, or maybe both. I'm not sure. It's a work in progress. We'll be able to, one of us will be able to print it out. So far, it's the people in my office, print it out, scan it all together as one file, and then upload it to the VLA committee page as soon as that can happen, so that you'll then have all the testimony. But you probably will not have it live during the hearing just because of the funky way it's working with the technology right now. If you do, great, but just don't expect it. And then we'll get it to you as soon as we can afterwards. Sorry about that. It's just the way we're working out all the kinks in the technology. They're hoping maybe that can be solved for the biennial budget, but we'll have to stay tuned on that.
Great. Thank you, Janet. And so that's tomorrow for this committee. And then next week, we'll be doing our work sessions on the budget, though I don't think we've formally scheduled it. I can't remember, because Appropriations is requesting us to do a report back by February 5th. So it'll be something of a quick turnaround, though we don't have a ton of items in the supplemental, I don't think. Great. Any questions on that? All right, seeing none, I think we'll just take a brief, a 12-minute recess until 11:30 to when the schedule says we'll start our next briefing, and we'll work to get everybody into the room. Just for members to know, like when you shut off your video, you won't be on the YouTube feed, so it's just a helpful thing to know if you're doing that. Okay, so we'll recess for about 10 minutes and try to get everybody in the room. Thanks.
Senator Lucchini.
Oh, sorry, Representative. Yep.
Yeah, before we jump, there are a number of people, I don't know if they can't see the chat, that we just had the chat discussion, but there are still people who haven't been able to change their identification. So if anybody's having difficulty doing that, maybe Karen could help them. They could message Karen or chat Karen, and they can help. She can help them change that. So I'm just not sure if they can see that in the chat or not.
Okay. Yep. Great. That's a good reminder. And if once we get going at 11:30, we can click on screens, and then we can one of us can make sure that we get the name in there for people viewing. We'll see the correct name. So it's a good point. All right. So we'll be back.
I can change mine to Louis Lucchini.
Let me change yours. All right, we'll be back in a couple. Okay, well, it's past 11:30, so we'll get started. I think we've got most of the people admitted in from the waiting room here. So as it says on our agenda, we've got at 11:30 agency briefing from the Department of Defense, Veterans, and Emergency Management. For newer members of our committee, we have oversight over most of DVM, with the exception of the main emergency management, which falls under criminal justice and public safety. So if you look at our agenda, we've got a list of people within the department who we'll be working with throughout the session. And just to kind of quickly go over from the commissioner's office, we've got the state's adjutant general and commissioner, Major General Doug Farnham is here with us today. From the governor's office, the outreach person is Joe Morrow. I don't know if he's on. From Maine's Bureau of Veteran Services, we've got Dave Richmond, Kevin Russo, and Melissa Willett. And from Maine National Guard, we've got Colonel Blair Tinkham, Colonel Michael Abbott, Colonel Matthew Barassa, and Colonel Norm Michaud. So with that, we will turn it over to the Adjutant General. General Farnham, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on today. I know your agency has been incredibly busy over the past year, and especially the past few weeks as well. But I can certainly appreciate the work you've done with the COVID response. I know in my district, the Guard was very helpful with some nursing home issues and things where they came in and helped us take care of some stuff. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, General. Welcome.
Great. Thanks, Senator. And I know a former chair of this committee would be very proud of your time management and actually starting pretty much on time. No legislative time for this committee. So I appreciate that.
It's because we have Senator Farron on board again. That's what.
Oh, I know. He's been keeping me in line for a long time. So
Yeah.
I appreciate getting the time to talk a little bit about the department and what my intention is here. I'll just run through some slides here real quick that really were prepared to augment the document that was done earlier in the year. But to give you some information. I'm not going to go through all of it, but go through rather quickly, and then leave that document behind that has some data for you to use in the future, and then turn it over quickly to Dave Richmond to talk about veteran services, because in reality, that's it's the veteran issues that you see the most legislation about, and it's what you and it's obviously what you hear from your constituents the most on, and so we'll try to leave the most time for that, and then of course open it up to questions, and either you can ask me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll punt it to one of the team that's on here, or you could ask them directly if you know that they'd have the better answer. Brad, you can't use inside information to ask the weakest link a question that you know they don't know the answer to. That's all.
Wouldn't do that, sir. Wouldn't do that, sir.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Scott, if you want to run those slides.
Yeah, I haven't tried to queue them up yet, so I'm going to try to share my screen at this point.
Great.
And let's see, I think that's it. All right, you all see my the presentation?
Yep, we can see your screen.
All right, great.
Great. Next slide.
I'm going to mute. Let's see if I can mute myself.
All right, next slide. Okay, so that's what I intend to do is quick overview. I'll talk about the National Guard piece, and then we'll hand it right over to Dave for Veteran Services. Next slide. That is how we are organized. As you see, Maine, as Senator Lucchini already mentioned, Maine Emergency Management is part of our department. Obviously very busy as well. We brought them in the past, you may remember, just to give you a brief overview so you knew they were there and a little bit of what they did, but due to time and the fact that they're crazy busy, as you might imagine, we didn't bring them in this time. And you'll see the rest. Scott Young, the Deputy Commissioner, that helps on all the most of the work with your committee. Okay, next slide. So this just gives an idea of our annual expenditures, and broken into the general fund, which is really this very small part of our total budget. And we show this all the time just to kind of point out that it's not just the military side that is dependent a lot on federal funds. That red area is also a big part of both MEMA and obviously Veterans Services budget. Not as much Veterans Services, but we do use a lot of federal funds. And this does not even count the federal money that's directly through the National Guard payroll and expenditures that don't go through the state system. Just for an example, the Air and Army National Guard total payroll is about $125 million a year. So just our federal payroll dwarfs the state portion of our budget. Okay, next slide. That is Camp Chamberlain. So I know a lot of you haven't had a chance to visit Camp Chamberlain. We'd love to, when we're through COVID, have everybody come over for a tour, and it's a beautiful facility. We cut the ribbon in June of 18, moved in the previous couple months from that, and about a $30 million building, and it is just an incredible facility, and very proud of it. It's over by the Veterans Cemetery off Civic Center Drive, and like I said, it's been great to be in that facility. Totally federally funded, other than a very small part, so that the deputy commissioner can have an office and a few other folks. But it is a great addition. Camp Keys is still up there. We have repurposed a lot of the parts of Camp Keys, and it's still up on the hill, and you'll see later on some of the improvements that have been made up there. Next slide. When we talk about the National Guard and our state role, you may remember that last year when I got invited down to do the annual State of the National Guard presentation, we brought a lot of our folks into the Hall of Flags to put on display our capabilities. And there were twofold for that. One was the fact that it had been since really 1998 that the National Guard had been called out to do anything major for the state of Maine. We like to talk about our capabilities in the state, but it really had been a long time since we needed to do anything. That's a good thing. I mean, we don't have the hurricanes and the big fires and the earthquakes and all the things that bring the National Guard out in all these other states. But I was a little concerned that our soldiers and airmen who joined the Guard because they want a federal mission, but they also like the idea of serving their neighbors and communities, hadn't got a chance to do that in a long time. And also the legislators and people of Maine forget that that's one of our roles and one of the things that we bring to the table. So we had everybody come to the Hall of Flags to put on display what our capabilities are. And 3 weeks later, there's a state of emergency, and the National Guard has been at the table ever since, doing a lot of things, and there's no real end in sight as we approach vaccine and everything else. But typically, when we are setting up our federal mission, whether mostly the wing is surrounding our airplanes, but the Army Guard has some flexibility. And as we're looking at the types of forces and the types of units that we want to have here in the state of Maine, we try to organize around providing the governor 10 essential capabilities. And this is kind of giving you an idea of what those things are and how we analyze, whether we have enough engineers or we need a few more military policemen, or whether we need more communication units, just so that we can try to make sure that we're providing as many capabilities to the governor as possible for our state mission. Next slide. One of the programs that is supported by the legislature and has been extremely valuable to us is the National Guard Tuition Waiver Program. This is just a snapshot of what just last fall used as of last fall. And basically that allows our Army and Air Guard folks to get their tuition waived at state schools, and then we expanded a little bit to include some other participating schools last year, and get their tuition covered. It is a tuition waiver program, and so the schools are required by the statute to waive the tuition for our soldiers and airmen. And then the legislature has been in the past been able to find some funds so that we can reimburse and offset most of the waived funds. Not 100%, but we've been able to waive a good number of those funds. Now next year that may or may not happen, but the tuition waiver statute is still in place, and it is very valuable to us for both recruiting and retention. Next slide. One of the unique things that I like to talk about a little bit that a lot of folks are not familiar with is our state partnership program. Maine for, I think, 12 years now, or actually I think it's up to 13 years now. We've had a state partnership with the country of Montenegro. And that ends up, we send soldiers and airmen to Montenegro to work with their military, and they send people here to see what we do. And it's been an extremely interesting experience for our soldiers and airmen to work at an international level, and especially with Montenegro. And for those of you that aren't familiar, they just recently became part of NATO. They have been right in the middle of this European and the Russian resurgence and the Russian interference in elections and Russian interference with their cyber systems and manipulation of social media and all the things that we talk about on big scales here and get all confused with all kinds of other things. In a little town like a little country like Montenegro, which only has about 600,000 folks, it is really evident of that gray warfare, so to speak, between the East and the West, or at least Russia and the West, for the influence of that country. So it's been, even though it's a very small country, it's been very interesting and rewarding, I think, for our airmen and soldiers to be involved with this program. Next slide. Maine Army National Guard. We'll talk about that first. Next slide. Threw up the slide on the COVID missions. Senator Lucchini mentioned that, and we have been very active from the National Guard, both Army and Air National Guard point of view in COVID. It started out mainly in planning and supporting the state EOC at MEMA, and expanded into running just providing some equipment in the early days. And then we helped prepare the warehouse, the CDC warehouse, and followed by manning the warehouse and, helping manage the inventory and pick the loads that were going to be delivered. We had folks out helping the healthcare workers and nursing homes and those types of facilities learn how to wear the PPE properly and get called fit testing. You may have heard about that. Did a lot of that, and then we transitioned to training people to training other folks to be able to go out and train people and teach them, and that's been better. We've been involved in planning for alternative care sites, planning for vaccine distribution when we get to the larger scale, and it's really and then just a lot of planners basically working in different parts of the state government. We've got accessioners and COVID tracers, or the trackers, to help out. Right now, I think we've got around 75 to 80 soldiers and airmen that are out supporting different roles in COVID support. Now you'll see one column on there, and then there's a couple pages of this, and just to give you an idea, if you talk to folks what we've been doing, there's one column on the cost of 25%. Early on, the use of the Guard was fully covered by the federal government, and then they switched to a 25% cost share, which is more normal during disaster relief. And just last night, the President Biden had extended the use of the Guard through the end of this fiscal year, the end of September, and also changed it back to the 100% federally funded. So that'll be a benefit to the state. And he also went retroactive back to August. So all those numbers on there that show 25%, those really are not applicable anymore. And all that is going to end up being covered by the by the federal government. The total bill to the state was up to about $500,000 just paying the 25% prior to that. So that's good news. It's $500,000 of some of the COVID relief money that the state has that can be used for something else. Next slide.
And General, can I, would you like to take questions as we go? Does that work?
Sure, that's fine.
Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, General. Excuse me, I just can't resist telling you that Saginaw County, I share a little bit of it with Senator Vitelli. We have a weekly and now monthly phone update, and our EMA District Representative Sarah Bennett is part of that, and it's been incredibly helpful to be kept up to speed on exactly what you were just talking about. So can't resist giving her a real thank you for the work she's doing.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. Okay, some more good pictures and data on that slide that you guys all have now. Next slide. This just gives you a snapshot of where the Army Guard facilities are in the training land, and how many people are assigned to those locations. As you see, pretty much spread all over the state. And that is one of the one of the factors that we look at as they determine missions and locations and armories, is to try to get trying to balance where the need could be for state use with where the population is for recruiting, and making sure we can retain folks. So it's a little bit of a balancing act to try to make sure we're covering the right areas. Next slide. Shows that we've got just about 2,000. We're a little under 2,000 right now, actually, in the unit. One of the themes you'll hear often as we talk about any of the benefits or the things that the legislature might do to support us. One of the things we look at is recruiting and retention. Does it benefit and help us in the area of recruiting and retention? Because it continues to be a challenge. Maine has a strong history, as you know, of service and high percentage of veterans. But our population aging, and really look at the school populations, that's less kids that are in that 18 to 23 range to recruit from, along with all the other issues that you've heard me talk about in the past on whether it be obesity or drug use or that type of thing that prevents people from serving. And recruiting is a challenge. So that's the lens we look at a lot of things through. But roughly 2,000 soldiers, and 520 of them are full-time employees in a variety of different capacities. Next slide. Gives you just a look at where some of the deployments are going. I'll continue to talk a little bit about our state role and what we've been doing, COVID and whatnot, but none of the normal stuff is stopped. We've got 120 or so down the southwest border. We just, in February, just weeks before all this COVID emergency started, and we actually knew that it was building up. We got about a little over 100 folks back from Poland that had been over part of the European Reassurance Program or mission, and then we've got some guys going out the door, another 130 soldiers going to AFRICOM, leaving this spring. So we continue to do our normal federal mission as we always have. Next slide. These are some of when we look at to the legislature, what can be done to help the Army National Guard, and really many of them are similar to the Air National Guard. You can see that list. I'll talk a little bit more about the facility support here in a second. And that just kind of gives you an idea the types of things that we look at. Next slide. Talk a little bit about the facility. We get facilities all over the state, and their variety of, some are state owned, some are federal owned. There's leasing and licensing. It's rather complicated. I can't figure it out most of the time. That's why there's some folks on the call that can answer specific questions. But when we talk about maintaining those sites and building them out and doing what we need to do, how we pay for them depends on the use and the ownership and that type of thing. And that's why we're going to talk later on in this session about bonding and And in the budget, there's money in the budget for some of the sustainment of our facilities, and that is why. Next slide. Back in 2012, 2013 timeframe, there was a bond that was part of it was going to be part of a 10-year plan for capital improvement of our state armories and some training facilities. And that we use that. We've got an example, I think, in the next couple of slides of some of the things we've done. And that the first 5 years of that bonding ended, and we're working now on trying to get the bond to continue that plan for the capital improvement and upgrade of our state facilities. The reason we were in that situation in the first place, because for many years not having enough sustainment funds in the budget to really attract the federal funds the matching federal funds in order to work on the state buildings. So that's something that we've been trying to dig out from under, and we've made some pretty good progress, and now we just need to keep it going. Next slide. And that really is just pointing out the fact that we require a certain amount of state money in order to get our full match. And in our regular budget, we do underfund that most years and have made it up and need to make it up with bonding in order to, again, we want to maximize the federal funds we can bring in to match those state funds so we can continue on that sustainment and the capital improvements of our armories. Next slide. These next couple of slides just kind of give you an idea of some of the projects that were done with the previous bond money, and you'll see the state, this column for the state share, the federal match, and what the total cost of the project was. See some of that work was up at Camp Keys after we moved it to the new Joint Force headquarters to make that a more usable location, and pretty much work done all over the state at our armories. Next slide. Some more examples. Next slide. Air National Guard, we'll go quickly through that. Next slide. We really have three locations for the Air National Guard. Most of our folks are up at the Air Wing in Bangor, the 101st Air Refueling Wing, the world famous 101st Air Refueling Wing, flying the KC-135 up there, and then down in South Portland, our facility, we have two squadrons down there, the 243rd and the 265th. And then, of course, at Joint Force headquarters in Augusta, we have a few airmen that do some of the state joint issues. Next slide. This gives you an idea of what they do. The refueling wing in Bangor, and it's oversimplifies to just say the refueling wing. We've got the 10 tankers, and the mission revolves around that refueling mission. But with that comes the security forces and the logistics and the maintenance and security and all the things that go with running an air wing. It also provides some benefit to the state for state response. We've got I don't remember the breakdown. It's just less than half of our guardsmen that are doing COVID duty are actually airmen. So. And then the 243rd and 265th down in South Portland are comm related, and they do a lot of deployment. They do a lot of work all around the country, and are really looked at as experts in their field, and have really some amazing capabilities out there to set up, communications networks. You go into some place that has nothing, and they can come in and in a very short period of time set up secure communications and have an organization running pretty quickly. And they have, we've sent them down to Puerto Rico after the hurricane down there. We sent some equipment and people down there to help get communication set up in Puerto Rico, and they have a lot of capabilities. Next slide. I should just say next slide, because it's a military briefing. You've got to see that. You've got to see the wiring diagram. But that is the Air National Guard, and how we're broken down. again, most of the organizations are at the wing in Bangor. Next slide. And that's our numbers, about 1,000. So it's about half the size of the Army Guard as far as people go. We got 539 full-time employees, which is, so our percentage of full-time employees on the air side is higher just because our mission is a little bit different. More of it is day-to-day with the alerts of the tankers and that type of thing. Next slide. And we deploy all over the world and have been for 20 years. Actually, our deployments have slowed down slightly on the air side, which is a good thing. 2 years ago, we were at an unsustainable deployment pace, and we just couldn't continue that. So we're getting back a little bit, something that's a little bit more acceptable. And most of our deployments are still in CENTCOM for the tanker, and but we do go to Guam some, and then the South Poland guys have been spending a lot of time in Africa. So that seems to be the current deployment location for a lot of folks. Next slide. And that just kind of gives you an idea of what is coming up for deployments on the air side. And again, the message here is just that while all this stuff is going on at home, which we haven't really talked much about for years and years, all we've talked about is this federal mission. Well, that really, has continued to plug along, and we're still supporting that. Next slide. And again, recruiting in pilot retention are big issues, and then we've got balancing that deployment cycle, which again that has improved some, and we're so used to talking about it that we still do, but it is getting better. Next slide. And they know that don't prepare a briefing for me and not have a picture of airplanes flying. That's just a requirement. So it's just a cool photo of a KC-135 from the Maniacs about ready to refuel a B-2. So next we will go to Bureau of Veteran Service, and I'll turn it over to Dave Richmond. And then if anybody doesn't have a question right now, we can save that to the end, because I know Dave has got some real meat in his brief. So I'll let Dave go.
Thanks, sir. Next slide, please. So we want, at the Maine Bureau of Veteran Services, we want anyone who's a veteran in Maine or their family who has a question about veteran services to call us, whether we administer the benefit or not. We'd like to talk to them first. Next slide, please. All of these missions are tied to our statute, except the very last one, which I added because it's such a problem in Maine. It's a problem over the whole country, but particularly in the Northeast and particularly in our state. Reduce and strive to end Maine veteran suicides is job one for the VA, and it is for us also. The other missions on here are, like I said, all in our statute, beginning with the services we provide to Maine veterans through our claims personnel. We represent veterans in Maine before the VA and help them file claims and help them access federal and state benefits. We oversee and operate the 4 state veteran cemeteries. We recognize the service and sacrifice of veterans in Maine. Marketing and outreach is in our statute, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we do that. Maintain a searchable database, just used it today, and I'll explain that to you also. And finally, create and maintain a strategic plan to work to end homelessness for veterans in Maine. Next slide, please. So I wrote Maine Veterans Homes as a benefit. It doesn't fall directly under our bureau. The Maine Veterans Homes does have some statute that's located in 37B, our department's statute, and that is a benefit for Maine. And as the director, I sit on the Board of Trustees for the Maine Veterans Home. I mentioned the Maine Veterans Cemetery System. We have 4 from north to south. It's Caribou. We have one in Caribou, 2 in Augusta, and 1 in Springvale, the Southern Maine Veteran Cemetery. Tax exemptions for certain veterans in Maine. the lifetime day use park pass, recreational licenses, special license plates for veterans. The Veterans Dependent Education Benefit is a tuition waiver, much like the one General Farnham was talking about. But this is for the dependents and spouses of 100% permanent and total veterans in Maine. And the benefit is a tuition waiver through the university system for eligible dependents. It's quite a benefit. Free copies of DD 214s. We maintain copies of our service members' DD 214s on this case management program. Not every state does that, and there is no charge. And there's a lot of cases where a veteran may not be able to find their DD 214, and having access quickly to that is a good benefit. And one of the greatest benefits we give to the veterans in our state is free representation by our VSOs in representing them to the VA and helping them file claims. Next slide, please. This is on the map where we're located. The 4 cemeteries are on your left in purple. And our claims offices are 6 field offices from north to south: Caribou, Machias, and Bangor. And then we've got Lewiston, Portland, and Springvale. And we also have a central claims office located right at Togus. And our central office is located in Augusta at Camp Keys. Next slide, please. This is our budget, just over $1 million for a personnel budget. We have 44 full-time employees, including myself. Our all other budget, just over $2 million. And we put on here also that what we get from the federal government in the form of plot allowance. When we bury eligible veterans, we get a stipend for the plot allowance from the VA, and that's what we received in FY20, just $276,000. And when we get that money, 2/3 of it goes into a non-lapsing account, which we use to offset our operation, and 1/3 of it is put away in a non-lapsing 014 account for the future maintenance of the cemeteries when we no longer get plot allowance, when the cemeteries are closed. Next slide, please. Some statistics from calendar year 19. Powers of attorney are reported because anytime our claims, our VSOs have an interaction with a veteran and we're going to help them file a claim, we take a power of attorney so that we can act on their behalf. And we use that as a statistic to measure how many veterans we've interacted with. Claims filed 1,900. So you can see that many of the power of attorneys resulted in an actual claim being filed. And then our recoveries for that year were 32.9 million. 864 burials. The recognition I'll talk a little bit more about, but those are basically coins and certificates that we've presented to Maine veterans to recognize their service to the state, and park passes issued. Next slide, please. This is a fairly new slide because it was prepared right after 2020 ended. And you can see that with the impact of COVID, our claims folks were still able to file claims in the value of $28.4 million, but most of them working from home, doing claims over the telephone and through virtual means like Skype and Teams. And our other numbers are on this dashboard also. So we were able to continue with the mission virtually pretty well. Next slide. Some accomplishments in FY19 and FY20. In 19 and 20, let me back up a little bit. When COVID hit, we had a tool to work with to assist veterans. It's a fairly new tool, and it's the VFAP program, Veterans Emergency Financial Assistance Program. And it was put in place in late in 18 actually. And I guess my point is we had something to work with when there were so many veterans in need during COVID. So we're in our third year of operating it, but basically it's $250,000 a year, the balance of which we give to two vendors. One is the American Legion, one is Easter Seals, and they administer financial assistance grants for us for any veteran in Maine who has an emergency that they can't solve on their own, and they're eligible for up to $2,000. This year we added to that LD 184, which is assistance to facilities or organizations that provide transitional assistance to veterans, i.e. shelter. So in these facilities basically are the ones that aren't getting any assistance from the federal government or the state. They're just not-for-profits on their own helping veterans. And this was a lifeline that the legislature approved that we were able to implement recently, and we've already started assisting some of these facilities and associations. Some national recognition, we've received 3 pillars of excellence from the VA in the last few years, one for suicide prevention efforts, one for our Maine Justice Action Committee, and one for our homeless coordination program. Next slide, please. Special initiatives. One of the things that one of our employees worked on right when COVID hit was a study, because we recognized and we had heard from some veterans at the Maine Veterans Coordinating Committee that dental care for veterans was an area of concern. With the VA, you're only eligible for dental care if you're 100% permanent total, or you have an actual injury that caused you a dental problem, then you're eligible for care through the VA for that. So there's a lot of veterans that have problems that they couldn't fund on their own, and we took a look at it, and it resulted in a report that Sarah Sherman, our Director of Strategic Partnerships, wrote. And one of the findings in the report found that our neighboring state, New Hampshire, had a program that assisted veterans with a grant from Northeast Delta Dental and a partnership with several dentists across their state, where those dentists, many of them veterans themselves, agreed to provide discounted care to veterans, and they were eligible for the funds that were raised. So we now have one of those in our state, and there's $35,000 in it, and we're in the process of recruiting dental facilities in the state to help veterans. And that all happened since COVID hit. Outreach. There's a link on there that I'd like you to click on when you have a minute, because it's going to bring you to our 90-page resource guide. It used to be 146 pages. We've actually gleaned it down to 90 pages, and we've made it easier to use. There's an index in there. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can find it much more quickly. And we've updated, we've changed the names as appropriate and as facilities change. And we've added facilities that we know about that help veterans. And that's available online. If we were in the State House, I would have brought a copy to hand to Danielle for you all, and we do have a printing on the way. So if you'd like a hard copy of this, please let me know and we'll get you one. But in the meantime, please click the link and see what's in there. Next slide, please. And here's some more information on how we accomplished our mission with our VSOs working remotely. Next slide. Here's a roll-up of the cemeteries by total acreage and how many plots and how many reservations, and how many certificates of eligibility, which are issued as a pre-need type of thing. When somebody knows they'd like to be buried in the veteran cemetery, they can apply for pre-need eligibility. Next slide. A recognition program. Next slide. So the honoring a veteran from a grateful state has been around for years. Next slide. These are some of the plaques that hang in the State House. There's a corresponding coin to go along with each one that we'll present to a veteran from one of these wars or conflicts. The World War II coin and plaque, Korea and Vietnam. Each of these plaques is in the State House. Many of you have probably seen them. Next slide. The Women Veterans coin and plaque is also in the State House. This, the last plaque is for the honorable service of all Maine veterans. That plaque is sitting behind me, leaning up against my wall. It's completed, it's ready to be dedicated, but it's not yet hanging there. It's waiting for a time when we can all gather safely. Next slide. We also offered the Gold Star Recognition medal to service members who pay the ultimate sacrifice. And we have pins to give their family. Next slide. The Silver Star Medal is for former POWs and or missing in action, and POWs and anyone who's been wounded and has a Purple Heart. Next slide. And with that concludes my briefing, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thanks, Director Richmond. I know we had a 100th birthday party for a World War II veteran and got one of the coins, and it was a really special day for him and his family. It's a cool thing that you all do for that. So, any questions from committee members? Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions for General Farnham, but I will preface those by saying I'm a Navy man, so please don't hold that against me.
I already do.
It wasn't the small boat Navy, so I'll leave it at that. But you know, the greatest oxymoron in the world is naval intelligence. So I'll leave that open for you. I do want to preface though my remarks by saying, you know, great job by you and your team. You guys do fantastic work. And I want to thank you and all your team for your service and your dedication to the state. It's and the country. It's amazing what you guys do. Two quick questions. You know, it's supplemental budget season, so you know we're going to go through that next week. And I noticed in our materials we're looking at, if I'm reading them correctly, we're looking at a curtailment in military training and ops of about 189,000. And a curtailment on veteran services of around 227,000. So two quick questions to you. One, what is the operational impact of these curtailments? And two, is there anything specific in the line items or the budget items as we go through the supplemental that we should be focusing on as a committee that we really need to be paying attention to in terms of making sure that either they're preserved or there's something that we need to be advocating for?
Right. What I'd say, for the most part, on the curtailment, I'd say what is in there was our fair share to meet the governor's targets as everybody tightened their belts some. We're at the advantage that we have is, if you remember what the slide that shows the federal, the federal and state spending, we do have a lot of sources of federal money, and some of that there's some flexibility on how we code things as far as how much of it is federal versus state. And so for the most part, we were able to do it with very little impact on current operations. For instance, a lot of the stuff that we normally would do are being done by some of the guys on orders for COVID support. So they're getting, they're busy doing that, so they're not doing some of their other days. So and that's not really a state issue, but we have that ability to shuffle. So I just say that short term we have some more flexibility than others would. So I wouldn't say that. Our biggest concern probably is going forward is just those sustainment dollars for the facilities, because without the state money to draw the federal match, then we get hamstrung pretty quick. So that would be the case. And if Scott or anybody else has anything else to add to that, but again, short term, I think we're okay. but in the long term, like every other department, some of these curtailments are quick fixes and can't, aren't sustainable for the long term.
Yes, General, if I just add, in relation to operationally, I mean, we didn't cut any programs. We were able to maintain all programs that were in place as we reviewed the areas where we could take some cuts and basically do our fair share. So we've remained operational in providing all of the services that you're expecting us to provide.
Did you have any follow-up, Representative Chiazzo, or
No, I'm good. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. That's appreciated.
great? Representative Tuttle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had stuff to do up at City Hall and I returned, but as the Chairman Chiazzo says, I'm an Army guy, so I won't hold it against anybody.
I say nothing but positive things about the Army now too. So I had to change the way I talk, and I know what "huya" means. Hua? I don't know how to say it.
They're wrong, sir.
Representative McCrate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Richmond, I just wanted to thank you for being so available when I've had constituent questions on veterans issues. And in every case, I've gotten an answer, usually the one I'd like, but definitely an answer. So that's just so helpful to be able to serve constituents. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative.
Great. Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. Oops, let me. Okay. I had my hand up before, so I think Senator Farron's been knocking me off. So
he does that all the time.
Yeah. I'm sorry I'm late, but I wanted to come a little earlier. I guess virtually I just walked about 20 feet because I'm chairing criminal justice and public safety at the same time. So I'm here now. Mr. Richmond, I came in when you were talking about dental services. I'm a graduate of St. Francis, which is UNE, and I live 7 miles away from there. So I was wondering, have you ever approached them in their dental school to provide services for veterans?
Thanks for the question, Representative. Yes, they're in the report.
Oh,
why don't I send you a copy of that report? In fact, I'll send it to the committee clerk so she can distro it along with a copy of the resource guide. But okay. UNE is in there, and we did have many discussions with them.
Well, thank you. I haven't really introduced myself to the rest of the committee, but I want to tell you that I'm from Biddeford, and there's the Vietnam chapter of America right there in Biddeford. The president is an old high school friend of mine, 2 Purple Hearts, and he was also the membership officer, and I found myself paying lifetime dues. I am a Vietnam veteran associate. And for full disclosure, I told him, do you really want me? I was in college during Vietnam and dressed like a hippie and protested. So, so we shook hands, and that was a long time ago, but very proud to have my medal, my medal also. So, you know, what goes around comes around. So thank you.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say, Senator DeChambeau, I missed the local pronunciation of Biddeford and leaving out the R. I lived in Old Orchard Beach for a while. I missed that an awful lot. I guess my question kind of goes around with our troops? It's been going around. It seems like a lot of our constituents are asking what's going on with our National Guard down in Washington, D.C., wondering what the credible threat is that's causing this deployment, what the threat level is, what the exact mission assignment would be for that, and how long the next set of troops that were just deployed, the 75, how long their length of deployment is expected to be.
Okay. Well, I was going to bring up the capital mission before we get done anyway, because there's been a lot of stuff in the media, a lot of concern. And first of all, our guys that just got home, I met all of them last night when they get home. 186 came home yesterday afternoon and last night. I met them and got a chance to talk to them. Their hotel, they stayed at the Watergate Hotel. You can't make it up, but they were at the Watergate Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel now. They did get their meals most of the time. There was a little bit of logistic problem with the caterer, and they changed caterers, and it was mainly a logistical issue getting the meals to people. But they said that every day that they were at work, these people would show up with armloads of pizzas, because there were several of the pizza companies in the area that in social media or whatnot, they were putting ads out to support the troops, and people all over the country were donating money to these pizza places, and then they were making pizzas and just walking and then handing them to the troops when they're on work. So I'm just glad we don't have a picture of some Maine guy with his box of pizza with a pizza half in his mouth, while he's standing there in front of the Capitol. But they all had a couple of days there at the end waiting for their flight home, that they had some time to get out and tour the monuments and see all that kind of stuff. And out of the 186, I think I heard that there were only about 7 of them that had ever been to DC before. So they all sensed the historic nature of what they're doing and the ability to see that. As far as the future goes, I think there's a couple of different missions that overlap, and they're all there at the request of the either the Capitol Police, the DC Police, or the Secret Service. And all those agencies that are responsible for providing security had put out requests to the National Guard, and then they put all these requests together and kind of figured out which ones were overlapping, and then got the number down to, it's just shy of 7,000. And then there's parts of those missions that fall off in another week or so, and then a few more requirements that fall off a couple weeks later, and then they kind of dwindle down. So the total that is just almost 7,000 will eventually be down to 0, I think by the middle of March is what they're looking at now. Now, which batch of the folks coming home are our guys, I don't know if that's officially determined yet. I talked to they left yesterday mid-morning, and I was able to see them all before they left. I think all of them were volunteers. They wanted to go. They're excited to be down there, and it's what they do. So I think it's generally a positive thing. The treatment, is I think what you see in the media is not. I mean, are there snafus? I mean, that's why that word was created. It's for the military, right? But for the most part, it was a great experience. And while I'm talking about that, I just want to throw out for an awareness level for you folks that the 200 that went down on the 16th, I think Saturday prior to the inauguration, they all got called, I believe it was on Thursday, Wednesday night and Thursday, in order to show up for this mission. I talked to them before they left and getting on the airplane. I said, where were you when you got the call? And about 3/4 of them were at work. So they ended up having to go to their employer and say, I just got the call from the Guard. They need me to go. And that's what our employers, guardsmen do, and they need to do to make our business model work. So and we always talk about the airmen, the soldiers. We talk about the families, maybe not enough, but we do talk about the families, a sacrifice. But in the Guard in particular, it really is the employers that they have to be on board as well. So.
Representative Tuttle.
Yeah, briefly, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Dave Richmond on the staffing shortfall at the Southern Maine Veterans Cemetery in Springville. I know, David, we had a meeting this summer, and I didn't know if you could give me an update, and even the committee an update on that.
Thanks for the question, Representative Tuttle. As far as growing the staff, there's nothing to report. I remember we talked about the access to the facility during COVID restrictions, and we were able to solve that problem. But unfortunately, the size of the staff is still the size of the staff. That's what we have to do the mission with now.
David, how much money are we talking about?
Well, it depends on what type of position we would ask for, but we have equipment operator, the foreman, and a groundskeeper. And if we get another groundskeeper or another equipment operator, the cost would be in the neighborhood of $80,000, fully burdened.
Yeah.
But
could you send me something on that, David?
We can do that. I can give you the price.
Email me.
Yep, I can do that.
I'm quite concerned about that. You know, we had a pretty good turnout from folks in the veterans area, and you know, well, we're all veterans, and doing the most we can to assist the cemeteries has always been a very good function of this committee. And if you could get me that information, I'll share it with the committee.
Happy to.
Great. Senator Farron.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator DeChambeau, I have to tell you, a rebel and a protester, that explains a lot of questions I had about you. So I'm glad we clarified that. That makes it good. General, you and the entire team over there, the support you give to our veterans and to our airmen and soldiers is amazing. And I think one of the things we have as committee members that's important is understanding those roles. And, you know, you mentioned the soldiers and the employers and the airmen and everything else, is that I find it fascinating how many legislators don't understand those dual roles between being a citizen soldier or citizen airman and having an employer and family commitments, and whether they're in Title 10 or Title 32 or Title 5 and all the different things. And we always try to everyone wants to do things for veterans. And I think what with Dave and his folks and what you folks bring through is that we can really impact things that make a difference. I mean, we want to wrap ourselves in the flag and talk about park passes and license plates, but suicide prevention and homelessness and things that really make a difference. And I want to give a shout out to Senator Lucchini, because we were just talking a little bit ago, as a couple of those programs, specifically the tuition assistance and the program to help veterans with shortfalls, the $250,000 that Dave was talking about. We as politicians run around there, pass a bill, get it signed, and then it dies on the appropriations table. And that $250,000, Senator Lucchini shook trees down and a bunch of other folks, and took on many folks to put that program to. And it's great, Dave, for you to recognize that and what that does, because a lot of times we don't follow through on that stuff, and those things die in the vine. So that's our responsibility, is to find the money. We can get the program, but we got to follow through. And I think we got a good crew to do that. And we got a great support staff there with your staff, General. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator.
Yeah, thanks, Senator. And I'll echo that back at you. It was a team effort on trying to get funding for a lot of these critical programs. And it's always irritating when the law's in the books to create a fund and there's no money attached to it. You know, it's frustrating when we see that. So it's good to finally, especially with the emergency assistance fund, to get that up and running. So to help veterans who are truly struggling. So great. Any other questions from committee members? Seeing none, thanks again, General Farnham and the entire team for coming over today. As Senator Farron said, you know, thanks for the amazing work that you do. And I know you're all incredibly busy and have a lot of stuff to do now. So appreciate your time, and thanks again. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you fairly soon and with some legislative matters. So
Great.
thanks a lot.
Thanks, Senator, and thank you all for listening.
Great. And while we wrap that up, that is the last item on our agenda for today. I don't know if Janet, if you have anything else to add. I think, again, tomorrow the Appropriations Committee will be having the joint hearing. It's going to be interesting to figure out when we're going to be on. It's one of those things where you just kind of watch and see when they talk about our stuff.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to know about that. I've heard 1 o'clock, but I've been there before, and it could be a lot later.
Right. So I think, Janet, so it's slated at 1, and I believe they're going to just kind of brief from the department, covering a variety of areas, and then the public hearing section is going to come after. And then it's kind of, just because of the technology, it won't be broken down exactly the same as before. Is that right?
Is Karen going to send us a Zoom link, Senator, on the
That
meeting?
should come from the Appropriations Committee.
All right.
So
Will
you should have already received it last week. The sender is AFA Committee. It's not anybody's name. That's the from line will be capital AFA and then committee.
Well,
And
I haven't gotten it, so if they could resend it to me. I know
that's very difficult to do. We can ask, but it
okay.
like I couldn't send you the link because my link is for me, but I will see what I can do.
Right.
Let me look at mine just to help you.
Well, Karen's got my email.
I know your email, but mine came on Thursday, right around noon. So Thursday, the 21st. Maybe that would help you find it. I don't know.
Okay. All right. I don't want to take up any more time.
No, but I will let them know that you need that link. And then also, like Senator Lucchini said, the recommendation I was given last night when I double checked was that you all sign on at 1 if you can, and just sort of wait through the criminal justice part, because they can't divide it up like they normally would do in person. But if you do turn off your video, then it won't be broadcast to YouTube unless you want to be on the screen the whole time, which I will leave up to your discretion.
Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In caucus this morning, the AFA chair mentioned that each department has a slot. So I don't know if it's possible for Karen or Janet, so we're not logged in at 1 o'clock and just have it running in the background. If there's a way for the AFA clerk to just tell us if we're scheduled for 3 or 4 or 5, because I know that they did have specific slots lined up for departments, so that we're not sitting there all afternoon waiting to come in, if that's possible.
I can ask, but I was told that they were not given specific times. So my information and your information do not match currently.
That's not unusual. I'm sure you're more accurate than I am.
Yeah, I think the technology is what's changing the way that they're going to present tomorrow. Representative Wood.
Well, I just came from an AFA meeting where the EUT committee was scheduled. There's not a time slot, it just goes in order. So when you looked at what the committees were, we were number 3. And the first committee took a lot longer. The second committee was pretty short. And then we were just up. So it wasn't a specific time frame, but the EUT analyst was able to send me an email to let me know that we were getting close to starting. So I don't know if that's something that Janet could do. And then Commissioner Figueroa did a presentation, then the committee asked questions, and then there was one person that spoke from the public at the end of our committee. So at first it sounded like the public hearing for all the committees were going to happen together, but actually it got broken down at the end of each of the presentations. So that was my experience that I just came from.
Great. One of the difficulties we'll have is that we don't get to see the list of who's signing up for other committees, and that's generally what will dictate how long our hearings last. Like for this committee, we'll know if we have 30 people signed up, but it can be kind of tough to navigate with appropriations. Because some are really long, like you said, Representative, and some go quickly. It all depends on who shows up, type of thing.
And I'm happy to send any email out when I think it's getting close. That's not a problem.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Are you okay? All right, seeing none, I guess so we'll be in appropriations tomorrow, and then we won't have anything on Friday, and we will be back in committee on Monday with public hearings at 9. So great. Well, we'll see you all tomorrow, or if not, have a nice weekend. And thanks.
Thank you. You as well.
Karen, the last shall be first.